Everyone, Luke here from Life Labs, doing a little interview here with Justine from, Radiant Health?
Finding Radiant Health, yeah.
Finding Radiant Health, okay. So I found her on Instagram. I was just looking for people, I've been trying to find more guests for the podcast. And basically what I did, I just went into Instagram and I just did a search on HTMA, I think. And I was just looking at some of the accounts. I think you already followed us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw that you were following us and that, I don't know, you had a fairly good size following, and I saw your posts and stuff, and I was like, so I decided to DM you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So when did you get involved with with mineral balancing?
Mineral balancing specifically, I started learning over the past summer, so it's been about 9 months or so. I had been quasi-aware of it for maybe a year prior to that, and before I had heard the term mineral balancing, but I thought it was adrenal cocktails and beef liver and oyster capsules, and so I did not touch my interest until I knew that it was more than that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And then, so who did you learn it from? You learned it from Susan, right? You took Susan's course?
Yeah. And I did some of Clark's first course, the HTMA Secrets. I did that as well. But Susan was my first training. Yeah.
Okay, cool. How did you find out about Susan?
I think from a friend on Instagram who I've never met in real life, and she kept telling me about mineral balancing, and I kept trying to tell her about Andy Cutler Chelation, and that I really started looking into the mineral balancing, and I was like, oh, maybe I like this.
Okay, cool. So, so initially, you were looking into mineral balancing. Was it for your own health, or?
Mostly for clients now, because I'm a practitioner and I'm in a really good place with my health. I am doing mineral balancing, but I'm not, it's more like looking for peak health. I'm not trying to solve anything major at this point.
Right. Okay, cool. So let's talk about your health journey. I'm guessing, what happens to a lot of people that end up getting involved with this sort of stuff is they reach a crisis, or something happens where their health falls apart, or their life kind of goes off the rails, and they realize that that they need to solve the problem. Does that happen with you, or?
Absolutely, yeah. I had an epic crash.
Yeah.
I like to say I was never healthy ever. Even infancy, my parents said I didn't sleep. I was colicky. I was unhappy. And that's my earliest memories are just discomfort, pain, depression. I didn't know it was depression because I didn't know what happiness felt like.
Right.
Until I was 28 years old. And I was like, oh, this is different. Yeah. So I was just kind of going along functioning, but in this constant state of just distress and discomfort and frustration, I think is probably one of the most accurate descriptors of how I just felt all the time. There was just anger and frustration and trying really hard, but not sure why things weren't clicking. Then I got really bad acne when I was 17. And I think there was an emotional connection to that time that kind of flared it. And then I was put on birth control and antibiotics, which I took for 5 years, twice a day for 5 years. And then when I was 22, I just started my first semester of grad school, and my skin started breaking out like crazy again. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm just out. And so I started researching online and discovered the paleo diet, and was like, okay, I'll try this. Cool. So I overnight went paleo, quit all my meds. And was like, oh, not only is my skin getting better, but my headaches are going away. I'm sleeping better. My mood is better. It was like this balloon was deflated inside of my abdomen because I stopped bloating so much. And I always thought I had a wide rib cage. Turns out I was just bloated my entire life.
Right.
I was kind of on the upswing for a couple of years. And then in 2016, I went on to do an artist diploma. I was in classical music at the time, and I had to get a TDOP. I don't want to use the other word for it. One of these things. And just really started going downhill really fast after that, and started getting desperate. And I started getting more and more extreme in my approaches to things. And I did the GAPS diet. I tried the Walls protocol. And things were just getting worse and worse. And actually, as I did the more extreme diets, I really like face planted and got to the point where I could only eat broth. My skin was breaking out. I had headaches for like weeks at a time, every single day. My whole back just like locked up and I could
Mm-hmm.
not function. So I was like, okay, I guess I need to ask for help. And so I went into functional medicine and started working with a functional medicine practitioner, and of course spent thousands of dollars on all of the testing and okay, yeah, I have SIBO, I'm hypothyroid, I'm autoimmune, all the things. And she gives me all these
Mm-hmm.
supplements and I'm just getting
Right.
worse and worse and worse. And it's to the point
Yeah.
where I started realizing I was reacting to sulfurous foods, specifically thiol, so not meat, but like garlic, onion, cruciferous, like
Mhm.
cabbage, broccoli, all those things. And I was like, at this point, I was eating the AIP diet and I couldn't tolerate sulfur and I couldn't tolerate coconut. So I was down to like lettuce and carrots, and I was moderately histamine sensitive as well. I actually think I had mast cell. I just didn't know it at the time because this was like 2017 and people weren't really talking about it at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just eating meat and lettuce basically. And it's like, okay, as long as I avoid like every food that normal people eat, I'm
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
okay, but not great. And I have this photo from that time, and I had just like acne like this, and my inflammation all over. My hair was falling out, my eyebrows were falling out, and I just look like a zombie. There's so much
Oh wow,
inflammation.
your eyebrows were falling out.
I mean, they were like still there, but they were not what they are now. And
They were like yeah, they're thinning.
thinning for sure, like hypothyroid,
That's crazy.
because it
Yeah, that's
wasn't.
crazy. Right. Right.
And as it turns out, all the sulfurous foods were redistributing mercury around my body. But I'm still like trying to
Right.
figure out, okay, what causes a sulfur sensitivity. So I was coming up with like sulfur SIBO. And so I was doing more SIBO treatments and it wasn't helping. I was still sensitive to the sulfurous foods. And I was like, okay. But even from the beginning, like, functional medicine had this big approach on or focus on SIBO at the time. And I was like, okay, they're telling us that SIBO is a root cause, but they're also telling us that SIBO recurs. That doesn't add up. That's not a root cause if it comes back. So I
Right.
was always kind of questioning this model and eventually kept landing on mercury toxicity as a cause for the sulfur sensitivity. But then I was
Mhm.
looking into, okay, how do you get mercury out of you? It was like, eat sulfurous foods, take
Right.
glutathione, NAC, like all these things that I knew I couldn't take because I had been given them in functional medicine. And it was just like, that's when things just got so bad, like so
Mhm.
bad. And I was like, panic attacks, could barely get out of bed, and just was like, what is going on? My life is ending. Like, I don't know how I come back from this. And so
Mhm.
I ended up finding Andy Cutler chelation, which is a specific method of oral chelation that's generally gentler than other chelation. We take primary chelator that we use is alpha lipoic acid, which
Mhm.
it's a mercury chelator, and we take it in very low doses every 3 hours. So I was taking like, during the kind of hardest times, 1 milligram of that every 3 hours. So
Alpha lipoic acid, is that a fat?
it's an antioxidant. Most people know it as an antioxidant and a blood
Okay.
sugar stabilizer. And it's in a lot of multivitamins, and people don't know it's actually moving mercury around in their bodies. So it's,
Okay.
it's a metabolite of ALA that will actually grab onto mercury and move it
Okay.
with a half
Interesting.
life 3 hours. So if you're not taking it
Okay.
every 3 hours, you're getting a lot more redistribution because it's just picking it up and dropping it and picking it up and dropping it. So the
Mhm.
premise of the protocol is if you take low doses and you take it every 3 hours, including through the middle of the night, that it reduces the redistribution, which appears to be true. And so
Mhm.
I was like, all right, like I'm desperate. I'll do this. Like this seems like the only way that I can get out of this hole that I'm in. So I started that protocol, and it was very clear that kind of everything they say was true as far as how my body responded, but it
Yeah.
was brutal. And it was like, I have this picture of like 2 months into it, my whole face just like puffed up. But I could tell because I would go through these like roller coasters of feeling slightly better and then feeling massively worse and then slightly better and massively worse. And it was like a lot of, the retracing and stuff that we talk about in mineral balancing. It was very similar to that, only like, as far as I can tell, like 100 times worse.
Right.
It was intense. And then about 4 months in, I hit what's called the dump phase in Andy Cutler chelation terminology, and that's about 4 months after you start chelating, your body starts releasing more on its own. And it was like, I just hit a wall and was like, could barely stand up. And I remember I would just spend all day in bed, and I would like crawl out of bed to put a sweet potato in the oven and then crawl back into
Yeah,
bed.
yeah.
That was
Right,
my
right.
life. Um, but the but it was really interesting because I was going through like retracing trauma that I didn't even like, I didn't know that I was traumatized, and I don't have any, I'm not aware of any like capital T trauma, but there was just a lot of nervous system stressful dysfunction in my family, especially like growing up. And I started realizing like as I started feeling better, but also worse, it was like plunged into like, I've been depressed my whole life and I didn't know it. Like, how am I still
Yeah.
alive? Like this discomfort that I had felt, it was like it all came kind of rushing back, even though it had started to feel better with the diet stuff a few years prior. And so it was just like,
Mhm.
it kind of felt like I was, in the one hand, like totally brain fogged, but on the other hand, like seeing more clearly as far as like this has been impacting me my entire life.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was, yeah, it was brutal. And I think actually, so I've been mineral balancing now for 7 months, and I'm starting
Mhm.
to retrace through that time, which has been really interesting of just like having these
Yeah,
memories pop up. And I'm like, wow, did that happen? Like I forgot
yeah,
how bad it was. And
yeah, yeah.
I don't feel bad. It's just like I'll have a dream and I'll remember that time and be like, oh my gosh, like how did I survive that? But
Yeah.
on the other side, like it was totally life changing. And I divide my life like before that time and after that time, because all
Mhm.
of my memories, even from before getting that mercury out of me, don't even feel real because I was such a different person. So it
Yeah.
absolutely changed my life. I did it for about 4 or 5 years. I'd say the first couple years were the hardest. And then after that, it was definitely easier. And then it
Wow,
got to
four or
the point.
5 years. So you were taking that supplement every 3 hours for 5 years?
Yes, for 3 days
Wow.
on, and then you take
Wow.
3 days off. So about half
Oh,
that
3 days
time.
on, 3 days off. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I could
Wow.
take some breaks in between. I did 175 rounds of 3 days
Okay.
each. Yeah, over 4 to 5 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it
Yeah,
was
that's
like,
good.
okay, go. Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna say it's great that you stuck through it. That's often the most difficult part, is like trusting the process.
I don't think I had a
I mean,
choice. Like I
yeah,
looked back
right,
on it, was like, if this doesn't work, I have nothing. Like this was like the last stop for me because I hadn't found mineral balancing, and I was like,
right.
what's going on? And I think even like I was focused specifically on mercury, and I think like that's probably why as I was searching, mineral balancing didn't come up as much, because mineral balancing
Mhm.
tends to just use heavy metals or like talk about copper more, even though mercury is discussed. And
Mhm.
I was more mercury centric in my searching. So
Yeah, yeah. I think if you were had been on a mineral balancing program, it probably would have eased some of the symptoms, just because you're getting so many more nutrients at the same time.
for sure. Yeah, my body was
Yeah.
like, I was just slayed. Like, and then to try to detox at the same time. And while it did work in the end, it was like, the chelator's just ripping the mercury out of my cells, and I don't have the
Right.
nutrients coming in. I can't eat anything. So
Right. Yeah.
my detox pathways were just horrible. So yeah, it would have been a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. It probably would have been faster too. But that's interesting. I am more open to chelators than I used to be. Um, Partially because I used to work under Dr. Wilson more strictly, and he's like super against any chelation.
Right.
But over time, talking with people like you, I noticed that especially like gentle chelation, it does work for certain circumstances. You know
Right.
what I mean?
For sure worked for me. But there's also
Right.
a lot of people who just like can't handle it, or also like they have kids and a life and they can't, like I could not have done that, I think, with kids.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Whereas mineral balancing, it does tend to do most of the same things, but it's more gentle. Like
I'm sure that's
usually
not
most people on a
anyone described like the intensity that I experienced.
yeah, yeah. Most people on a program, they do like it's when they detox them, like it's not that intense. Like they can still, most people on a program can still live their lives while they're healing.
Right. And it's
Which,
intermittent. It's not just like, okay, next 2 years, this is your life.
yeah,
Each day in
yeah,
and
right,
out.
right, right. But yeah, I'm definitely more open to chelation than I used to be. I think some people, even on a program, might use like temporary small dosages of a copper chelator. That's one thing we might actually end up experimenting with. Lewis, I think he found one at some point and we were going to try it. I think he did try it and he thought that it worked pretty well for a short term. But actually, now that we're doing more of our own thing, like gentle chelation, I think is something that we might dabble into more. Because I think for extreme cases, like such as yourself, where that it's like one specific mineral or like heavy metal, especially, that's really holding people back and they're kind of stuck. I think temporary, like more gentle chelation that's more targeted towards that specific heavy metal can actually help quite a few people.
Right. I think especially after getting some mineral balancing under your belt to just improve your overall
Yeah.
vitality. And then I was like
Yeah.
exploring, because a lot of the Andy Cutler people are like, nothing but Andy Cutler is going to work to get mercury out. I'm like, well, okay, think
Yeah.
about the concept of doing like a year of mineral balancing to prep your body, then doing a year of chelation, and then doing a year of mineral balancing after that to kind of clean things.
Yeah.
The other thing to
Or
keep
even
in
like,
mind with a chelator is if
yeah.
somebody has amalgams in their mouth or has like just even specks left, like even if they've had it removed, but there's a tiny speck, if you give them a chelator, it can actually just pull from the amalgam. And
Oh
so
yeah. And it'll go into their body, huh? Yeah.
right. So I
Yeah.
actually never had amalgams, so I was able to just jump right in, but it's a whole different ballgame for people who had amalgams.
Yeah, they need to get them removed beforehand, don't they?
For sure. Yeah. And there's a lot of functional and naturopathic doctors who are just having people take chelators while they still have amalgams in their mouth. And it is going to make
Yeah.
life so much harder.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to find someone that has expertise.
Yeah, there's
I think.
lot of ways to go wrong when you start messing with metals.
Yeah, 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 yeah. If you start messing around with chelation, and you can do a lot of damage too. If you're taking just like the shotgun approach, and you're just
Yeah,
yeah, and you're taking really strong chelators, it can wreak havoc on your body
for sure.
because it's just pulling metals out of enzymes and it's redepositing them everywhere, and it's just chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, I know people who were pretty much paralyzed from that. Just
Oh
like
wow. Yeah.
chelation. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no really like once that happens, there's almost like no retribution. Like we can do like sue the doctor. Like yeah,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you gotta be careful.
it was a challenge for me with my business. And so like it came out on the other side and I was doing better. And then I had like all this capacity to start doing nervous system work and understanding the emotional connection and like really, eating to fuel my body and heal my metabolism and all this stuff. It was like all these things were just working. Whereas before when I had the mercury kind of blocking everything, it was like I just kept hitting a wall. And even the thought of like trying to do nervous system regulation in my like pre-chelation time frame is like I can't even imagine it. Like I don't even think it would have worked because I was such an extreme case. But then so I
Right.
get to the other side and I have this business and now I want to help people and I'm like I don't want to send people down that road, but at the same time, like I know that there are clearly people where I can see that. And it's like, yeah, you're one of those people where there's something physical that's going to have to change before a lot of these like, basic foundational things are maybe going to take as much impact. But
Mhm.
what do I do with you? Because like I don't want to send you down what I did because it was horrible. But so then I
Yeah.
found the mineral balancing and I was like, perfect. Like this is exactly what I've been looking for because I've been wanting to talk about the heavy metals, but I don't have a safe avenue to send you down that I really like trust unless you're up for just like putting your life on hold for like 3 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, besides about mineral balancing too, is like you have a lot of tools in the tool belt. Like you can always back off the supplements. You can always introduce like more coffee enemas, or like you can always introduce certain things to like take some of the burden off.
For sure. Yeah, it's so much like I've been using that analogy with my clients of mineral balancing as like a knob that you can turn and adjust, like a volume adjustment. And then
Right.
what I did, it's basically like an on button.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like once
Yeah.
that starts, you actually
Yeah.
feel worse if you stop doing chelation rounds. So like I had to do
Yeah.
them every week. I had to do a round, and I remember trying to take a break, and it felt like my brain was like swelling outside of my skull. Like I was just like, you can't
Yeah.
see any light or joy. The brain stuff is I can take physical pain and discomfort, like whatever, but the mental side of it is the worst.
Yeah. Were you doing anything on top of the chelation to like help pull it out, like drinking distilled water or anything like that? Just nothing,
Not
just
really,
straight.
no. So
Yeah.
ACC has everyone take what they call the core four, which is high dose vitamin C,
You're right.
zinc,
Okay.
magnesium, and vitamin E. And so, I mean, I
Well,
was
it's
taking that
better than
and then
nothing.
liver support, but then, learning about
Okay.
mineral balancing, it was like, oh, I probably had a really low NAK and should not have been
Yeah.
just eating
Yeah.
zinc. And was probably in four lows and probably shouldn't have been taking vitamin C either, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you have a low NAK, a little bit of vitamin C is helpful.
right.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, I have one doctor's data test that I did in 2018, I think. And then the
mhm.
next test I did was in 2022. So I
Right.
don't have a lot of data for in between because in general, like they use a hair test to look for what's called patterns of mineral derangement, but they're not reading it the way that we read it in mineral balancing. So it's not very effective to have recurring tests. So we just don't really do them.
Yeah. 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 And most people, very few people realize that like a lot of zinc can make you worse, right? If you have a low NAK ratio.
Right. And I do think I had copper toxicity and oh, because I was taking molybdenum for the sulfur sensitivity. So I was taking a lot of molybdenum and zinc.
Okay.
So I think that
Hmm.
I probably was detoxing copper at the same time. And part of me wonders if that's part of why I
Right.
had such a rough time
Right. Yeah.
because I was taking 50 milligrams of zinc every day for like 3 or 4 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That could have definitely been contributing. Yeah. Yeah. I think like 3 months of mineral balancing, especially, is what I usually have people do because I have a lot of people that like have to get off like drugs, like antidepressants or something like that. You know what I mean? Usually, what I have people do, it's probably somewhat similar to Chelation, is like you want them to like be like at least 3 months on the program and build like a base of nutrient support, and
Right.
then it eases the burden a lot. I think to start weaning yourself off of things or doing chelation or whatever.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, in your practice, do you ever recommend much chelation to people?
Not usually. Every once in a while, there will be someone that's like, this might be something that you would want to look into. But for the most part, I think mineral balancing, especially just because mineral balancing can coincide with your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
So if like I had a message from somebody who's really struggling with a lot of symptoms and isn't, and we were talking about, she was looking into mineral balancing. I said, we might also consider looking into this, like potentially down the
mhm.
road. So starting with mineral balancing to kind of build some baseline and then maybe moving into either Andy Cutler or OSR is the other chelator that if you guys don't know about OSR, I definitely look into that. It's pretty interesting.
Is that
Supposedly,
for Mercury as well, or what is that?
yeah, yeah. Boyd Haley, if you YouTube Boyd Haley, you'll find a lot
Mercury. Okay.
on OSR, which I'm not as familiar with. I did some experimenting with it after my Cutler chelation, but it really actually slowed my metabolism down and I had an adrenal
Mhm.
crash and I was like, I don't feel like at the end of the day is the goal to get every single ounce of mercury ripped out of my body, or is it to be like
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
functioning? And if this is slowing my metabolism and affecting my thyroid and adrenals, I don't think that this is, at this point, I'm not like desperate enough to do something that's going to cause that kind of harm, even if maybe there's a benefit of getting more mercury out. But I think for like acute cases or like when it's like, kind of maybe where I was more at the beginning, it would definitely be
Mhm.
worth looking into.
Do you know much about copper chelators?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah, Mercury is more your expertise, huh?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'd like to learn more. I think that mercury and copper probably really, really often coincide, and people who have copper
Yeah.
toxicity would also have mercury toxicity.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I would like to experiment more with the copper chelators, especially. If we ever introduce something, maybe I'll be sure to share it with you.
Yeah, yeah. I love this
Okay.
experimenting and kind of like, because I think there is good information in different places, and if we can kind of pick and choose, there's good stuff to be had.
Yeah, I've realized this more lately. Like I was talking about, just being more free with like my practice and having more practitioners in the community that are outside of Dr. Wilson. And I've really realized this recently, having people switch to the. I don't know if you're aware of the valence supplements.
Yeah.
Um, they're like they're way more powerful. And so under Dr. Wilson, like it was like, there's nothing you can really beat the Endomit supplements, and there's no real point in trying to improve upon them. But then you can just see like so many people can notice a difference in them. You know what I mean? Like we don't even ask for reviews, and people just send us emails after email after email saying how much powerful they are.
Yeah.
Like people that have been stuck with like a low NAK ratio for like 10 years, and Limcoma never was able to bump it up 2.5, and they take a couple of the NAK up, and they notice like a massive difference, like
That's amazing.
like better than they've ever felt.
Yeah.
So that opened my eyes a lot too. Is like, you know what, like, he doesn't have all the answers. There's a lot that I think that we can improve upon, and maybe and I think chelation might be a little bit part of that. Not for everyone, but for some people that are stuck.
Exactly.
And some people that have more acute toxicity or had an exposure, maybe like if they worked in a specific field for a long time,
For sure.
and they're exposed for a long time, we know it's that one metal that's causing a lot of problems. I think a more gentle chelation can help people.
Yeah. From my Andy Cutler days, the thing that I would stress is if whatever chelator you're using, make sure you know the half-life of it. And then taking it
right
on the half-life dosing can really relieve a lot.
Oh yeah, because you don't want it to build up too much in the body. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So if the bond starts to break, so if it grabs a metal and then the bond starts to break at the half-life, if you have another dose coming in at that time, it can kind of grab what was dropped. So what was dropped doesn't resettle somewhere else. So taking lower doses on the half-life is a lot safer than taking a higher dose like once a day.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, for sure. What are some other things that you've noticed from working with people with mineral balancing and like kind of starting your own healing journey? You think your health has reached like another level in the last year, or?
For sure. Yeah, for myself, I think there's like a lot of things that I was procrastinating on that I just started doing them after I started mineral balancing. It was like, it wasn't like I had to force myself. Like, those things that you think like, oh yeah, I should do this, or I need to change this.
Yeah.
Especially for me and my business, like just a lot of things about how I was running my business where is very energy inefficient, and I was just kind of all over the place. And so just streamlining a lot of that and just like taking the time to get that organized so that it's not so draining, that just happened very naturally once I started mineral balancing, even though I knew I needed to do it for like 2 years prior to that.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. I think just kind of seeing things more clearly and taking initiative. And then definitely like I was quasi constipated before and I didn't know it because it was better. My bowel movements were better than they ever had been. But like, like you don't know what you don't know until it gets better. And then it's like, oh, wow, cool. So that, and I think in general, like just feeling more calm in general, but more clear would be like a calmer source of energy. So it's not like, you get that manic, like uppy kind of energy. That's really, like for me, the things that I've noticed the most. But I was starting from a pretty good place. I started in slow oxidation. I dipped down into 4 lows and I came back out again, and now I'm back in slow oxidation, starting to release some mercury again. And I was like, wow, like I was kind of expecting something else to come out first. Like, more mercury.
Oh, is mercury the first like big elimination you had still on the program?
Yeah, and it's like it's not like a huge elimination. It's but it's starting.
Well, generally, like something like mercury, you're not going to have a huge elimination.
Okay.
Like it's pretty rare that you see something like mercury or lead or like cadmium like jump up really high. I mean, sometimes you do, but it's just those heavier metals, they're harder for the body to eliminate a lot at once.
That makes sense. Also makes sense why the chelation was so hard.
Yeah, and generally people eliminate like the lighter metals first. That's interesting. Yeah, you still must have had mercury was obviously still a priority for your body.
Right. That's what I was totally expecting to see, like more aluminum or like nickel and kind of those. Yeah. And it's like, no, mercury.
Yeah. Most people eliminate aluminum first.
Right. It's hard to know like what else I was eliminating while I was chelating, and if the mercury was just blocking things and letting other things out. So
Yeah.
I don't have hair test data to know what came
Right.
out.
Right. Yeah. Usually it's aluminum. A couple reasons why. Partially because aluminum's so widespread. A
Right.
lot of other things like mercury might be more specific to people, but aluminum is just like widespread in our environment. It's in the water. It's in the air. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the second reason is because it's easier to eliminate. It's a lighter metal. Like think of like aluminum. It's a lighter
Yeah.
metal. It's easier to eliminate.
It makes total
Yeah,
sense to me. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But
My clients, so they've been, as far as what they've been noticing, definitely bowel movements is one of the most common things. And then just
yeah,
feeling calmer. I have a lot of four lows clients. And I think that's probably a lot because of my history is so extreme. I tend to attract people who have maybe more issues or more symptoms. And so a lot of my
Mhm.
four lows people have just like, having that taking the gas off. So they're just kind of able to be
Yeah,
more calm and present, and along with the digestion. And then also noticing like procrastination, they're not procrastinating on things, or they're noticing things in their life that they're like all of a sudden like this needs to change, this is not okay,
right.
this needs to change. And I know, in your interview with Sina, you were talking about, she was talking about that as well. I'm definitely noticing that, which is really really
Yeah,
cool to just start to see how your life is impacting your health beyond this like tunnel vision of like it's all the mercury.
yeah, yeah. Part of the reason also though is that more and more people are in four lows.
Yeah.
Um, we're becoming like a four low society. You know what I mean? If you read the work of like Dr. Ag, four lows wasn't nearly as prolific as it is nowadays. Like he
Right.
never saw four lows in children, basically. Now we see four lows in children all the time.
And it makes sense. I mean, based on how people are feeling, and all the generational burden of the metals, but also just the like worse microbiome, worse nutrient density, and generational trauma also, which I think is a
Yeah,
lot
and that's
of my stuff was like it wasn't even a lot of what I was carrying emotionally was just
Mhm.
like my grandfather's that was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
passed down to my dad, and
yeah.
then that like I was like, where's this anger? Like what is this
Well, it
from?
says right. It says in the Bible, right, the sins of the father will be
Right?
passed for 7 generations.
Yeah.
That's there's a lot of truth to that kind of stuff. People don't realize, and there's it kind of makes sense that there's so many four lows is a collapsed state,
Hmm.
and if you say in a lot of ways society is collapsing. You
Right.
know, it is. It's just there's a lot of signal and truth in like in the hair test for like the way society is the way it is for sure.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, it's
know.
really cool to also just have the data, like, and to know the kinds of tests that Dr. Eck was looking at 30 years
Hmm.
ago, 40 years ago compared to now, to just have like
Yeah.
the hair tests line up with the autoimmune disease rate, like the diagnosis rates that we're seeing in conventional medicine and all
Right.
of that, the obesity and diabetes and like all of it.
Hmm. One thing I'm sure you've observed as well is like talking about how like you become like you're procrastinating less and you become more efficient with your business and like you've been better that way. Is like one thing you'll notice as you heal is like so a lot of successful people don't understand that because they've always had energy, right? And so a lot of like the sort of like wanting people to like stop being lazy or like they don't or like you see them on, like social media where they're like just stop procrastinating or like all like the self-help sort of stuff is coming from people that already have energy, right?
Right.
So a lot of people don't realize that the way that they are is not because of some like I mean there's some aspects to that, right? Like telling yourself certain like affirmations and stuff. There is some truth to that, but for the most part those are just people with energy trying to tell people that don't have energy how to have energy, and
Right.
it's not gonna work. You know what I
For
mean?
sure. Yeah.
It's much
It's
more
the same
efficient just to raise your energy level.
Right. And the same thing with weight and weight gain. And people are so quick to judge someone who's overweight. And I have so many clients who are really struggling with weight and they could not have a more perfect diet.
Yeah, a lot of
But
it's just water retention and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, everyone is most people are retaining too much water and they're just bloated and constipated, and yeah, most people in our society are constipated to a certain extent at least.
yeah. I don't
You
think
know?
I was ever not.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
We
I
even
had stomach cramps and stomach pain all the time as a kid. Like I couldn't digest. And I remember I tell my parents, like, that food makes my stomach hurt. And they'd be like, well, that's what we have.
yeah. We even
Okay.
have it. We have it in our lexicon, right? When we sell someone they're full of shit, they're literally full of shit. Like, you know, yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so for Lowe's is definitely that's where I think hormonal analysis is. That's one of the biggest reasons why hormonal analysis is going to keep growing. It's because we're the only people that recognize a four lows pattern. Doctor,
Right.
that's one of the geniuses of Dr. Eck was he was able to recognize that third metabolic pattern and able to know what it takes to fix it. Okay, and so as more people drop into four lows, more and more conventional medicine is not going to do it for them. Right? You know what I mean?
Or
Because
functional.
yeah, it's not going to do it for them, right? Because if you're in fast or slow oxidation, it's much easier, I think, to take certain matters into your own hands and like kind of balance yourself in some ways.
Right.
Like most people are already balancing themselves subconsciously in certain ways anyway, like when they crave fat or they're craving stimulants to like activate their adrenals more or whatever. But for those, it's much more difficult for other programs to recognize and correct. And
Yeah.
so correcting for lows is a massive part of nutritional balancing in the future, I think. And that'll
Yeah.
be a lot of our practices will be just helping people in four lows and like becoming specialized in getting people out of four lows because it's very difficult for other programs to get people out of four lows.
Right. And
You
I
know,
think it's kind of challenging sometimes convincing people like to let go of their B vitamins or their vitamin
right?
C, like the stimulating things that they've been taking and just kind of they have like they're in four lows, so they're going to be more fear based anyways. They're going to be afraid, and then they're afraid to
Mhm.
let go of the things that they think are protecting them against infections or getting sick. So
Right.
that's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hopeful too that so the new they Valence is releasing a new Cal mag,
Right.
and I'm hoping the new Cal mag it'll be quite a bit more powerful than Paramin. I'm hoping that'll help people get up four lows faster too, because it also has instead of having people take taurine, because on four lows we give people taurine.
Right.
There's taurine in the Cal mag,
Yeah.
so it should reduce the amount of supplements a little bit people in four lows need, and it's more
That's nice.
powerful. So I'm hoping it'll help reset people faster, but we'll see. I haven't used it yet. The first batch is going out like next week, and I ordered like 3 bottles. So I'm gonna try it on myself
I
first.
ordered four.
What's that?
I ordered four. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah, yeah. I'm hopeful. If it's as powerful as the other ones have been, like the NAK up and the slow ox, if it's been as powerful, it should help get people out of four lows quite a bit faster. And that
Yeah,
would be huge. That would be huge for mineral balancing.
for sure. What do you
Yeah.
notice as far as like supplements aside, challenges with getting out of four lows or like emotional patterns that keep people stuck or that kind of thing?
I think sometimes people underestimate structural problems.
Mm,
So a lot of
yeah.
times, if you've been in four lows for a long time, like your body will literally like calcify into certain positions, and like it's hard to get out of four lows when like your neck's like this, and this like you're constantly activating your nervous system because you have a huge like calcification on your neck, and it's like making your nerves pop off.
Right.
Um, so I think sometimes people underestimate like what it takes to fix their structure.
Yeah.
Like
The
you need to
airway
be like
stuff is so fascinating too.
the what stuff?
Airway, like what tongue ties and whether or not you can breathe,
Oh,
and because that's very
right.
structural too.
Yeah, yeah. So I think sometimes people underestimate the like structure. Like you need to be doing the spinal twist like 4 or 5 times a day. I think like popping your. There's some more advanced methods that I do on myself that I don't necessarily recommend to some people, like especially older people. Like I pop my own neck and stuff like that. I don't know. I already did it this morning, so I can't. But like my skull will pop because I was
Wow.
in foremost for a long time. Um, and so I think people can underestimate like structure is a big part of healing.
Yeah.
And if you have bad posture and you have calcification in certain spots in your body, it can be difficult to get out of four lows because part of four lows is just relaxing the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So visiting it, if you can afford it, like I always recommend, like finding a really good chiropractor. And it's like any profession. Some chiropractors are better than others. So I tend to prefer chiropractors that are more old school,
Hmm.
like those kind of older crusty dudes that'll just they don't really give you any warning and they're just like that type of
Yeah.
Because some of the a lot of the new wave chiropractors, they're too, you could say yin. They're too like feminine. They're just like, oh, we're gonna relax you, or like, and there's some merit to that stuff, but it's not. I don't think it's as powerful as actually like you got to get in there. You got to move the joint. You know what I mean? That's what chiropractic is for, right? That's
Right.
not. And there's some merit to other like bodywork stuff too. I think like Rolfing is pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I haven't done it yet. I love just doing myofascial release at home and just like mobility movement. I feel so much
Yeah.
better after I do it.
Yeah, also like popping the toes helps. Doing the spinal twist at home. There's other like chiropractic maneuvers you can do on yourself, like to mobilize your hips a little bit, stretches, things like that. And also the pulling down exercise.
Hmm.
Okay, I know some people, unfortunately, because what's happened with Dr. Wilson is because people have seen the way that he's kind of become a little bit, and so they write off the pulling down exercise because
Right.
he's the main person that started to write about it, and he's the main, obviously, like person like the people learn about the pulling down exercise. But the pulling down exercise is extremely powerful. Like, it'll actually this this is a strange concept for a lot of people, but it'll actually help your structure. Okay, so you kind of think of it like this: like your body, if it is like a coiled up string, right? Like it has all
Yeah.
these, like it's not straight for most
Like,
people, right? There's like their necks aren't perfectly straight or whatever. But
yeah.
when you do the pulling down exercise, there's more force at the bottom, so it's actually kind of like pulling the string taut. It's actually pulling your body straight, like hanging or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the energy will actually build up in spots in the joints, and you'll feel it build up in places where there's tension, and then you can like feel it build, and you can pop it or things like that, or you could just there'll be heat associated, like it'll heat up places in your body, and you'll become more aware. But you were talking about earlier, a lot of healing is just awareness. Most people are sick in our society, but they don't know it because they're not aware enough to even know that they're sick.
Right.
Right. And so with
What
the
if you
pulling down
don't
exercise,
never felt well? How do you know that you
yeah,
don't feel well?
right. That's why a big part of healing is like there's a big like ego shock to a lot of people,
Yeah.
like where all of a sudden they realize like they were sick their whole lives, or like how they don't. That's a big like, or they thought they were a certain way, or they thought they associated themselves with feeling a certain way, and all of a sudden they heal and they realize, oh, like that wasn't really like how I'm supposed to feel, or like, and so it's a big
Right.
ego shock for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the pulling down exercise, builds awareness in the body too. So you can be aware of things you need to work on, like emotionally or structurally. Like you can feel like, where your hips are more and things like that. It builds self awareness. So yeah, I would say with four lows, a big one is structure that people overlook, and the pulling down exercise associated with that, and popping the joints. It's good to do like a pulling down exercise session, and then like pop yourself as you're doing it, because you can feel where tension builds up, and like, oh, I need to pop my back this way. Then you pop your back, and then you can continue doing it. Um, and then you can do it. You can also do the pulling down exercise like while you do your coffee enemas. That's what I usually tell people, because you can kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
You're already laying there in your bed doing your coffee enema anyway, or you're already in your sauna sitting down anyway. Like you might as well just do the pulling down exercise while you do those things, and that way you don't even really need to add extra time for the pulling down exercise. It's more time efficient, and
Right.
it's strange, but the coffee actually helps you move the energy downwards.
Hmm.
It's some weird energetic thing,
I'll have to
but
try that.
yeah, but yeah, I would say that's a big thing with people in four lows is the structure and like doing the pulling down exercise, and the near infrared sauna can help with the structure too. Like popping your back after a sauna is always good, because like the sauna tends to help
Ready to move.
release the fascia, and
Yeah.
it helps to help mobilize things more too. But yeah, that would be my recommendation for people in four lows. Don't mind your structure.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny as you were talking about that. I was thinking about my dad, who's actually in fast oxidation, low NAK
Uh-huh.
fast oxidation, and he is very, very unaware of his body, like very forward head posture. And I think a lot of it is airway related, because if your airway is obstructed, you actually get more
Hmm.
air with your head forward. So some of that could
Hmm.
be for a reason. But yeah,
Yeah.
he's very, very unaware of his body, and it's
Yeah.
fascinating. So I'd be like, how do you not realize that you're like standing on half of your foot, or it's just stuff
Yeah.
like
Yeah. And like the best athletes, you can see the difference in their posture. Like my favorite example is like prime Conor McGregor, who's like his neck and back is just like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, sometimes it can be airway related. Also, if people have bad, a lot of people don't realize they were born with bad eyesight, so they're constantly trying to see
Mm.
farther. So they stick their
Oh,
head
that's
forward because they're trying to see.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you
That's a big one.
see eyesight improve on the program?
Yeah, not as much as you. It's not. Yeah, I don't know if it's directly related to the program. A lot of it is just a lot of poor eyesight is just people looking at things in front of them too much. So like you can
I
actually.
actually that actually changed for me drastically. So I had
Wow,
glasses.
nice.
I was doing glasses as a 5-year-old, and then I had
Hmm.
either glasses or contacts for about 20 years. And
Hmm.
it was around. It actually was like a lot dietary related. When I changed my diet, I just started kind of
Hmm.
like, I don't feel like I need these anymore. Like I'm not, and my prescription was never super extreme, but I had astigmatism,
Hmm.
and like I would have trouble reading like street signs when driving, and there were just
Hmm.
lots of things. Like I'd go into like Chipotle and I couldn't read the menu. I'd have to
Yeah,
step
yeah.
right below it, even with correction. And then over just kind of through the process of my healing, it was just like, I don't need these anymore. And I even
That's
went
amazing.
I had my eyes checked a few years ago and they were like 2015 and like no astigmatism.
Wow,
And I
that's
still,
crazy.
right. And it was like, it's not something I ever intentionally tried to do. It just kind of happened along with
How
the
old are
heat.
you?
I'm 32 now.
Yeah, that's pretty. I don't usually see that level of correction, especially in someone that's like, past like 30. That's pretty impressive. Impressive. That's
Well,
awesome.
yeah, it probably was like fully corrected by 28. So
That's awesome though.
yeah, it seems to be relatively unusual. And I know some people like there's some stuff about vision and like long distance viewing and tapering down your prescription, and there's some things that you can do kind of externally. But for me, it was interesting. It was never something I tried for. It just happened.
Yeah, yeah. There's some techniques that you can do to improve your vision outside of nutritional balancing for sure. Like most of it is just like you're practicing looking far away.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then like it helps relax like the muscles in the eyes. So a lot of it is you're just like on a screen all day, and so your eyes aren't used to like looking far away, and so your eyesight starts to
Yeah.
um, yeah. Like I still wear glasses when I drive. Um, I mean, I do notice that like sometimes my eyes there is some difference. Most people once they become aware, they can notice like at least some like differences in their eyesight. Like if I'm tired or I've eaten too many carbs or something like that, like I definitely notice like my vision's not as good as whereas if I'm like really well fed and I'm really well rested, and I've been looking like farther away for like a significant amount of time, I can definitely notice like my eyesight's better certain days than others for sure.
Yeah.
But I haven't, for me personally, and a lot of my clients, I haven't noticed like a significant improvement like you have. That's from my experience, that's fairly rare. It might have
Yeah.
been that yours is more like nutrient. You were just because it was more like nutrient caused or something. Like maybe it was like
Yeah.
more
Either nutrient
zinc
or
depletion or something.
yeah, nutrient or mercury or just the effects of mercury. Because it's
Right.
interesting in the Cutler community, they actually say don't get a new prescription while you're in the dump because it's going to change. So like don't, it's gonna be a waste of your money. And my
Hmm.
husband, so he had amalgams, I never did. He had amalgams and he had them taken out in April of 2022. And
Hmm.
then as he went through the dump, his vision, so like 4 months after amalgam removal, your body starts releasing more mercury on its own. So that's the dump. It can be triggered by amalgam removal or by starting chelation. So for me, it was triggered by
Right.
starting chelation. For him, amalgam removal. Anyways, as he was going through it, his vision would get worse and worse,
Hmm.
and then it'd get better. Or like days where he was dumping more mercury and he felt worse, his vision would be drastically worse and then drastically better. So it's very much
Interesting.
fluctuated. And his hasn't healed fully. Like he still wears glasses to drive, but it's
Yeah, me
significantly.
too. Yeah.
And yeah, super interesting because that's something I think a lot of people don't think about necessarily as being, it's just like, oh, your eyes are just separate from the rest of your body.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's incredible that your eyesight's improved like that all the way to like 2015. That's actually truly incredible. That's
Yeah, I
awesome.
was like, cool.
That's cool. That's cool. Is your husband on a program too?
He is. Yeah, we started at the same time.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. That's cool. That's yeah, it's great to hear when like younger couples especially are on the program together.
Right. Yeah. When we met, he was eating like Taco Bell and Dunkin'
Yeah,
Donuts, coffee with like
yeah,
caramel syrup in it. And it's been
yeah,
an
yeah.
evolution, but he's like totally on board with all of it now. It's really cool to see. He probably
Fixed them
eats
up.
better than I do.
Yeah, you fixed them up proper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's all about it. I mean, when you start feeling better, it's funny because he wasn't like, he didn't feel bad when he
right.
was the way he was. Like, he was definitely functioning better than probably 99% of people, but he just started noticing over time feeling better and better the more he switched to my ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially for like a lot of dudes. Men in general probably aren't as in tune with their health as women.
Yeah.
Like, there's more women on the program for sure. Like mental
Yeah.
balancing in general, there's
Yeah.
definitely
That
more women.
awareness. I think we tend to be more aware of what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. And I try to explain to like men are also more egotistical a lot of the way and a lot of the time about like the food that they put like they don't think they that they're like too strong to like think that the food they're eating affects them.
Right.
Like, especially I notice a lot of, like men that work the trades and like yeah they don't understand how like yeah eating fast food 3 times a day is like yeah it affects you in ways you don't realize.
Right. Or like I'm burning all these calories, so I don't need to worry about what it is because everything's calories in, calories out.
Yeah, yeah, no, but it affects you. Yeah, like this guy I work with sometime. This guy I know, Eric. He eats like he'll just eat the tuna from like the Dollar General all the time.
Oh my gosh.
I'm trying to explain to him like, dude, you shouldn't eat it's affecting you in ways you don't realize. So a lot of I've noticed with like men that work the trades, like people think the trades is and the trades to a certain extent is hard on your body, like working that kind of lifestyle. But a lot of it is just like the fact that they're eating the way they eat. It's not so much the activity; it's just like it's the activity along with not sleeping enough and just living off fast food and
Right. Well, and if they have to travel a lot or like they're working far
yeah, it's
away, they
hard. Yeah,
don't have a kitchen.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing what some men can put in their bodies and function off of. It's insane.
Yeah.
The human body is truly incredible.
I don't like my mind can't even wrap around that because I couldn't handle that stuff when I was like
Yeah,
10. So,
yeah, yeah. All right.
yeah,
Well, is there anything else you wanted to chat about? Any questions for me or anything?
I'm good.
That was a nice little conversation. So let's talk about your socials. Where can people find you?
My Instagram is finding radiant health. There's a period between finding and radiant. So finding.radiant.health. And then my
Mm-hmm.
website is findingradianthealth.com. Email is Justine at findingradianthealth.com.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll put all the links down below the YouTube.
Cool.
So like in the info section, that people will be able to find your socials. And then yeah, give her a follow. And yeah, maybe we'll have you on again at some point. I like having people on again.
Yeah,
Like
that'd be
I've
fun.
had Susan on several times. We've had some other people on several times. Probably be going on again with Aaron from Valence.
Nice.
Probably in a couple weeks again. Just talk about the CalMag and some of the other improvements to like some of the formulas he's been working on. And yeah, we'll try to keep everyone updated with everything. But it was nice talking with you. We'll chat again.
Yeah, likewise, Luke.